Hey everybody, it's me Amanda with Once in a Wild, and it's time for another Once in a Wild Wednesday. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time seeing my face, my name is Amanda and I'm the founder and animal specialist here at Once in a Wild, which is our mobile zoo, actually located right here in San Antonio, Texas. And we also bring the zoo to you in person as well as virtually. So without further ado, let's go ahead and begin our live stream. Hello everyone once again, and how is everybody doing? How is the picture looking? How is the sound sounding? Let me know how everything is sounding and looking. And hello Milky Rosie, nice to see you from YouTube. It's nice to see everybody out there from Facebook and YouTube. So every single Wednesday we do broadcast for free of charge for you guys every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central on Facebook and YouTube, as you guys already know if you're watching right now. But we do actually broadcast every single Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. Central. The program is free of charge every Wednesday, but we do also have tipping capabilities if you are interested in donating. We do have a few ways to do that. Number one is going to be to book your very own animal encounter. That can be a virtual animal encounter via Zoom, and that can be also an in-person animal encounter if you are in the San Antonio, Texas area or in surrounding next door cities, if you will. And you can contact us via the number down below or visit onceinawild.com and request a call back or an email back from me, and I will let you know how that works. And how would you like to see our commercial about Zoom rooms? That way we can cover that as well in case you had any questions about our Zoom room programs. They're great for classrooms. So if you know any teachers out there, make sure to let them know about Once in a Wild and what we do. We are based in education. We are always striving to educate the public, including kids, of course, of all ages, anywhere from kindergarten or younger, all the way up through college and beyond. And we can even cater to any age and any group of people that want to come and see our programs. So let me go ahead and play our commercial for our Zoom room animal encounter, so that will explain that a little bit better than me just talking about it. But I'll let me in the past talk about it. How about that? Let's see here. Here we go. Let's watch this. Stuck in the house with nothing to do? Did your students miss their fun field trip that was planned for them? Are you looking for a fun team-building activity for your employees that are stuck in the house with the same old Zoom meetings from day in and day out? Was your child's birthday party canceled this year because you're stuck in quarantine? Well, have we got the solution for you? Our Zoom room animal encounters are a great solution for you. In Zoom room virtual animal encounters, we can bring the zoo to you, but from the safety of your own home. They are fully customizable, and you can invite all your friends to join in and meet all the animals. They are fun, unique, and very interactive. It's also a great learning opportunity. And most of all, it's very, very simple. Just contact us to book your appointment and schedule your Zoom room. Then select the animals you would like to attend in your Zoom room animal encounter, and then send the link to all of your friends and family who are invited to the Zoom room that we provide to your email. And best of all, we can bring the animals to anyone, anywhere, all over the world. So visit us at onceinawild.com or call us today. We can't wait to see you. Thank you so very much. Please let me know if anybody out there has any questions about any of our programs. We do of course, welcome any questions whatsoever about the animals we're meeting today on this program, or about any other animals you've seen in the past, animals that you want to see in the future. Let me know if you have any suggestions of any kind. That's always fun. I'm so glad that the picture looks good, so that is good to hear. And we're always troubleshooting and trying to improve all the time. So thank you so very much for doing that for us and checking in on the picture quality and everything. That's always one of my biggest concerns on these programs, because they are live streams and sometimes they stream a little slower than usual because it's real life, right? But hello, everybody. Thank you for joining, and I'm so very glad to see everyone. I hope you've had a good week. And today, as you can see, our first animal is actually right here on the desk. And I forgot to mention, we do have other tipping capabilities, which are down below at Venmo and Cash App. And we also have a PayPal with the same exact handle, which is at Once in a Wild. Pretty easy to remember, just like our company name says. Once in a Wild is all of our handles for those tipping capabilities. So if you do want to donate to our zoo, all proceeds, of course, go to animal care. But even if you book your own animal encounter, that is also going to go all the proceeds go to animal care as well to help us take care of our animals and keep our company going, of course, right? So please let me know if you're interested in your own encounter or in tipping or donating. Go ahead and do that if you would like. We also do have on our website, which is onceonawilds.com, which is right over here. Somewhere. There it is. That's where I should point. Onceonawilds.com also has our Amazon wish list, which is another great way to donate items. And thank you everybody that has already donated to our animals. Our animals very much appreciate it. So once again, we are talking about animals today. As always, we do have actually 3 animal species to meet you guys today. And Ghost, our axolotl, is here to see you guys once again. If you've seen her before or for the very first time, this is Ghost, our axolotl. Yeah, it's Ghost. You knew who Ghost was. Ash is a regular here on the show, and thank you for joining us today, as usual. So Ghost is one of my favorite species, and she's actually my favorite of all of our axolotls as well. We do have 3 axolotls here at Once in a Wild: Ghost, Gremlin, and Goblin. And Ghost is my absolute favorite. She has such a goofy and silly personality, and her coloration is just so pretty. Not that I don't love our other animals, of course, our other axolotls. I love all of our animals, but it's kind of hard not to have favorites sometimes, just because they kind of steal your heart away. And she's one of my favorite species in the world, the axolotl. Axolotls are very strange animals, and I am very partial to weird animals. I tend to gravitate towards animals that are kind of strange or misunderstood because I feel like a lot of people maybe don't like them or don't know what they are. So everybody knows like what a lion, giraffe, zebra, bear, all those guys are. And those are wonderful animals, of course, very charismatic and beautiful animals. A sloth, everybody loves those guys. But sometimes people either don't know what these strange animals are, or maybe they're just kind of like, that's weird. But luckily, axolotls are becoming more and more kind of popular and well-known due to art and cartoons and maybe even Once in a Wild making them well-known. And it's actually very important because the axolotl is a critically endangered species. So if you know much about animal classification, being endangered or not endangered, etc., and all the levels, the next step down from critically endangered is actually extinct in the wild. And after that, it's extinct all the way, period. So these guys, luckily, are very, very well kept and very well bred in the care of humans. So there's lots of them in the care of humans in zoos, aquariums, people's pets. Breeders breed them, and they breed in very, very high numbers, like most amphibians, right? Most amphibians have a lot of eggs and a lot of babies for insurance purposes, because sometimes their babies are very vulnerable to predators. So luckily, they're pretty easy to breed in the care of humans, and therefore there's lots and lots of insurance in the care of humans and all those places that I listed. However, in the wild, not so much. They are critically endangered. In the last, I believe, 20 years, their numbers have dropped so drastically. It's around anywhere from, I want to get this right, I always forget the numbers when I'm on the spot, but per square kilometer, it went from about 500 to around 35 in about 20 years' time, which is really bad. And I think that's correct. I'm sure it'll come to me if it's incorrect. This is a live stream, so forgive me. I'll look it up later to confirm. But my point is, they went from around, in the hundreds to around 30 something or less, probably now in the last 20 years. So not great. And they have a lot working against them, including pollution in their waters. They are an aquatic animal, so they rely on water to live, just like pretty much all of us rely on water to live, but they actually live underwater. They're what we call aquatic, right? They're under the water. So they cannot live if their water becomes toxic or polluted or full of trash or full of invasive species. What are invasive species? That means that it's other animals that have been put into their environment that don't natively live there, except for when humans have put them there. So invasive species for them include carp, which is a large type of fish, tilapia, which is another large type of fish, and other different types of animals that don't belong there that can either eat the axolotl themselves, so they don't get much bigger than Ghost here, and they could also eat the axolotl's young. Like we said before, they're vulnerable to predators already, not just including invasive species, but other predators that are naturally there, that should be there, to keep everything in balance, right? Every ecosystem has predators that are very, very important. But if you add more and more and more that these animals have no way to defend against or get away from, then you end up having problems, and more predation equals less axolotls. Also, they're going to be eating the food that the axolotl eats. Axolotls are actually carnivores, so they eat worms, bugs, fish, maybe even other amphibians. They eat eggs of other amphibians, all sorts of animals, but they are carnivores. But as long as it fits into their mouth here, see her little mouth by my finger, that is going to be fair game for her to swallow right down and eat it. But she is a carnivore, not an herbivore or omnivore, so that's what they eat. But if there's more competition, like I said, that's going to also decline their numbers as well. I hope my numbers were right. I'm going to look that up later. Sometimes I know my facts, and then when you get put in front of a camera live, it all goes away. And numbers are not my strong suit, but I will make sure and look that up. I believe I was right, though. Anyway, but they're not doing very well. And there are several reasons for that, like I said. So including the pollution, trash in their waters, all kinds of things. Predation in general, also invasive species going after them. Humans actually used to consume them as well. They were eaten by humans back before they were protected. Now that it's illegal completely, so that's better. Also, climate change. Climate change is affecting animals all over the planet, right? Because climate change either makes the temperatures increase or decrease where they shouldn't be doing that, and it's happening too fast. So climate change does happen naturally all the time. That's just the way the Earth works. But if it happens too quickly, animals don't have time to adapt or evolve to survive that drastic change. So what's happening to axolotls specifically, and other animals like this, is axolotls thrive in cold temperatures, cold waters. Even though they are from Mexico, most people think that Mexico is all hot weather. Well, some of the springs and rivers in Mexico are extremely cold, and that is actually where the axolotl resides. Axolotls are from the Xochimilco River system, which is in Mexico City, and that is going to be a very, very cold body of water. And that is the only place, on top of all the other pressures that they're facing in the wild, that is the only place that they are found in the wild, is that one tiny little river section called the Xochimilco River Canal. So on top of all of that, they only have one little kind of sectioned off piece of river where they live. So all those factors are making them very, very vulnerable to becoming extinct in the wild soon, which is very, very sad. So the reason I told that very sad story is to explain to you why it's very important to bring up awareness of animals like this. And that is one reason why they're one of my favorites. They also have superpowers. Axolotls, as well as some other types of amphibians and animals, can regenerate their body parts, but axolotls take it to the extreme. So you've probably heard of lizards being able to lose their tail and then regenerate the tail eventually, right? So most well, I don't say most lizards, but a lot of lizards have the ability to pop off their tail in an emergency situation. If a predator comes up and bites the tail can come off and the lizard can get away. The predator that's biting the tail can have maybe a snack of tail, but the lizard itself can get away, and then eventually the tail will grow back, and it depends on the species and how long it takes to grow back the tail, etc. But it's a great survival technique. But did you know that axolotls can do that with any of their body parts? So yeah, if a predator, like one of those tilapia fish, grabs on their tail, that tail can come off if the tilapia eats it off, and the axolotl can regrow the tail. But if that tilapia also grabs a gill, which are these things on the side of her head, she's got 3 gills on each side, so 6 total. They look like feathers, and they're red, and you'll see them flapping sometimes. That indicates that she's actually breathing. But if one of those gets bitten as well, she just did it. If one of those gets bitten too by any predator, she can regrow that as well if it pops right off. An arm can grow back if that happens to an arm. If something bites into her side and she's able to survive that bite in the side, she can grow back her side and all of her organs that might have been affected by that. Their bones grow back, their organs grow back. Anything on them, even if they get like just a little chip off of their back, maybe they get a little injury, bump into something, or get something torn, it grows back and heals perfectly. Isn't that amazing? Even their brain can regrow if they lose part of their brain. Now, they have to still be able to survive. A lot of people ask me, well, if her head gets bitten off or something like that, which is really morbid, but I do get asked this quite a bit. If the head gets bitten off, would she regrow the head? The answer is no, because she wouldn't be able to survive after that. But if part of her head gets injured or bitten off, or I guess smash or something, this is really morbid conversation, but if that happens to her and she's still able to survive for the few weeks and months that it takes to regrow that, and she can still function, she's got gills to breathe, and she's got all the things that she needs, she can actually regenerate that body part too. Isn't that amazing? Axolotls are incredible animals. Also, they're very special in another way. So most amphibians, this is how their life begins. Let's go back. Think of a frog. So frogs, newts, salamanders, toads, axolotls, and other animals like that are amphibians. But let's think of the most commonly thought of amphibian, and that's going to be a frog. There's frogs of all different types of species all over the planet, right? Except for Antarctica. There's frogs everywhere on every continent except for Antarctica because it's too cold and there's not much out there for frogs to live. Anyway, so these guys are amphibians, right? So frogs begin their life cycle like this. So male frog will actually start singing to attract ladies. That is typical for most frogs, and it will typically be around a body of water. Ladies come around, the two frogs will come together for breeding, and mom frog will then lay her eggs in the water, and dad frog will help to fertilize the eggs. And then typically the eggs are left alone underwater. There are some exceptions. Some frogs do very much take care of their eggs, and some frogs will place their eggs in different nesting type situations. There's even a frog, well, it's a toad called a peepa peepa or Suriname toad that keeps their eggs on their back. And then they have like a film that grows over their back, and the eggs actually hatch inside of mom's back and then grow. But that's a very different story for another time. One of my favorite frog species, or toad species, I guess, frog, toad, whatever they are. It's debatable. But anyway, so most frogs will lay their eggs in their water, be fertilized by dad, and then they will kind of leave them alone or have them like on a plant or something like that where the eggs can then develop. Then they will hatch out as a tadpole. The tadpole will be underwater or aquatic for the first part of its life, right? And then eventually they will start to grow legs. They will start to lose their tail. Their gills will actually shrink into their cheeks. So they all have gills like this until they shrink into their cheeks. And then frogs will eventually turn into what we see as a frog with legs, no tail. They have lungs, and they actually have skin that is breathable as well. But it turns into like an adult type frog, right? Or at least a smaller version of an adult frog, and that is called metamorphosis. This animal will go through part of metamorphosis. They start as an egg, then they become a tadpole like everybody else. Then they start to grow legs. They don't lose their tail though, so they are technically a salamander. This is a type of salamander, the axolotl, but it's a fully aquatic salamander that never actually develops into an adult salamander. So they do not develop lungs. They do not lose their gills. They stay underwater their whole life, and they just kind of stay there, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger until they, pass away. So let's see what you guys have to say about the axolotl. No, I do have more than you watching Milky Rose. I just think not very many people are commenting. Hey, Viviana, nice to see you. And I hope you're having a good evening as well. Yes, more people are joining now. If you have to leave, that's totally fine. You can always rewatch the program. So each and every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central, we do broadcast live, but the broadcast is almost always saved on YouTube once in a while, or on Facebook once in a while. So please either subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out quite a bit. Like and share the videos, comment on the videos, but subscribing is the best way to help us out there. And following us on Facebook as well helps us out and will help you to rewatch the video if you want to watch it again. Seeing what you guys have to say about ghosts or anything at all. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope the picture's good. Looks like it is. And yeah, so axolotls are amazing animals. Again, they're also carnivores. Their scientific name is actually Ambystoma mexicanum, which means literally Mexican glutton, or one who eats a lot of things in Mexico. So they're Mexican, right? And they are gluttons for food. So typically they're going to be kind of an ambush predator. They sit very still in their murky river waters where they're from in Mexico City, very cold, chilly waters, right? And these guys live in a very kind of murky, dirty looking, muddy, kind of swampy looking river. They're not in a clear crystal river like this, although they do find like this in the Cure of Humans, so we can see them and everything, right? They don't really mind that. But in the wild, they're going to be very dark colored too. In other programs, you might have seen Gremlin, and Gremlin is actually one of our other axolotls, and he's a wild type axolotl. He's very dark, almost blackish brownish. So I would say brown with black spots. That makes sense, right? For camouflage. That's going to help him to blend in to the background of that murky river that they naturally live in Xochimilco, Mexico City. So her coloration would definitely not do very well in the wild. And spontaneously, sometimes you will have albino animals in the wild too. Axolotls, all kinds of animals will spontaneously mutate as albino and be born that way. Most of them, though, they don't survive because they will be seen very easily by predators, right? They will stand right out. Even in a murky river, that white animal will surely be seen, especially as a baby. little white worm, they will be probably eaten pretty quickly. And also, she is going to stick out to her prey. Remember, she's not just prey herself, she's also a predator. So she has to stalk prey like worms, fish, bugs, all kinds of things, maybe other amphibians, eggs, as long as it's a meat item that can fit into her mouth, kind of like a fish. That's a rule of thumb for fish too that are carnivores. Fish that are carnivores typically just gulp down whatever will kind of swim by and look like food, right? Same thing, if you guys have ever taken care of or owned fish, you know that. Same thing with axolotls and most amphibians, they're ambush predators. So they kind of sit still and wait for their food to kind of float by or swim by. They don't have to eat every day, so they're not actively hunting usually, unless they're, I guess, just running out of food sources and they need to go out looking. They can certainly do that if they want to, but as a rule of thumb, most amphibians just kind of sit still and wait for their food to come to them. There are exceptions to the rule though, but she would kind of wait for a worm or a fish to swim by. She would probably feel those vibrations or even smell the animal go by, because they do have a great sense of smell as well as a great sense of touch in the water. They can feel the vibrations, and they do have vision as well. They can see. Their vision isn't great, but they can see, and they don't have any eyelids, so they're always kind of looking around. And when they sense a food item with any of those senses I listed, then they will gulp their food into their mouth and swallow it down, and that is how they eat. Here's a good question. Can axolotls regrow their heart? Yes, they can. So if part of the heart remains, as far as I've been told by other people that study axolotls, as far as I know, if part of the heart remains, they can regrow the rest of the heart. So it still has to have some of it there, to my understanding. How fast can axolotls swim? I'm not really sure, but they're not super fast. They're not like as fast as like a shark or a fish or something like that. Axolotls are usually sitting still, but they can swim away pretty quickly when they need to, either to get away from an enemy or a predator, or to, I guess, lunge forward at a prey, but typically it's going to be for safety, like getting away from something dangerous. So that tail that you see behind her kind of looks like a fish's tail, and that can certainly swim like this through the water. And in that case, they would actually tuck in all their limbs to their body to be nice and streamlined and swim right through the water and be able to get away from their predators or any danger, I guess. You can see her gills moving around. She's starting to kind of wake up a little bit. Earlier, I think she was kind of taking a nap. Now, a lot of people ask me, how in the world can they take a nap if they don't have any eyelids? And that goes for a few different type of animals, right? Like fish usually don't have any eyelids. Snakes don't have any eyelids. Lots of animals don't have eyelids, if you think about it. Most animals that don't have eyelids have some kind of spectacle scale or some kind of organ to cover their eye, so they don't really need to blink and protect their eye that way. Sometimes those animals can roll their eyes a little bit. I see a lot of fish doing that. I see her doing that too sometimes, just to kind of adjust their eyes, I guess, or look around. The eyes do move. Now, we don't really know how they sleep because we can't ask them, right? We can't really study that per se with, I don't think we can. But I definitely can tell when she's been at rest. And you know how I can tell when she's been at rest? That is by her looking at her gills. So when they are awake, I have noticed, and a lot of people tell me this, the same thing. Hi, ghost. How you doing? She's going to come up and see what's on the surface there. She's not taking a breath. She's actually just curious about what's on the surface there. Remember, they don't breathe air. They breathe water with their gills, which are on the side of their face. But these guys, I saw her roll her eyes just now. I don't know how well you can see that, if you can look real close, but she was kind of rolling her eyes. But how I can tell if she's been resting at least or a little inactive is by the color of her gills. If you see right now, I don't know if you can tell, she'll probably move so you can see a little better because she's going to be out here the whole time for the program. But the gills are really red right now. That indicates that she's been moving around and breathing with her gills a lot. If you see red gills like this on an axolotl or even a fish or other amphibians too, when they're babies, right? But fish too, that red coloration actually indicates oxygen. So she's breathing at the time, or she just had breathed, if that makes sense. But if she hadn't been very active and wasn't breathing as often, she would just kind of be resting. Now, of course, they still have to breathe when they're resting, but not nearly as often. So if they are kind of inactive, those gills won't be red. They will actually be the same color as the rest of her body. It'll be kind of a light color, just like her. She's a golden albino, so she's kind of goldish, pinkish, whitish, tannish coloration, very light colored, right? Now, albino and leucistic are two different colors of axolotl, and she's even more special because she's a golden albino. So albinos, straight albinos, would be not as yellowy. I know she doesn't look yellowy in this light, but she's a lot more yellow than other axolotls I've seen. They're more white when they're albino with red eyes, and then leucistics are white with dark eyes, almost black eyes. Hello, Ricky. How's it going? How does the picture look, Ricky? Let me know what you're seeing as well. Everybody else said it looks really good, so I'm really happy about that. But yeah, as far as how fast they swim, who knows? And they don't swim very fast for like long periods of time. It's going to be in short bursts. So I don't know if it's ever been measured. Maybe someone has measured it, but it surely wasn't me. But that is a great question. Amphibians are amazing animals as well in general, and deserve a lot of love and protection because amphibians are what we call indicator species. What in the world is an indicator species? Well, indicator species indicate something, don't they? So what does that mean? That's going to mean that does mean that does mean that they tell us something about our planet. Indicator species will warn us ahead of time if something dangerous is going to happen to the environment. So because amphibians have slimy skin, which is actually a feature of all amphibians, they have some kind of slime coat or slimy skin. Most amphibians have that to be streamlined in the water to absorb all kinds of oxygen and everything in the water as well. Some amphibians do breathe with their skin as well as gills or lungs or all three, which is pretty cool. Pretty amazing, right? And but they also absorb a lot of things with their slimy skin. They don't have scales like a reptile to protect their skin from something that would hit their skin, right? So if a snake got wet, that water would kind of just roll right off its back. If a tortoise got wet, same thing. The water would just kind of run right off. Amphibians absorb water. She especially absorbs water because she's in the water all the time. And she's very gooey and very slimy and kind of gross. No offense, Ghost. You're kind of slimy and gross. But it's not an animal that we pick up and hold, right? We just look at her and love her for the beautiful animal she is. But they do have the ability to absorb a lot of things, including bad things like toxins. Toxins in the air, toxins in the water. So amphibians, long story short, they're very sensitive. They're sensitive creatures to changes in the environment, whether that be temperature changes, like we talked about with global warming and climate change and all that stuff. All animals are affected by that, but amphibians kind of first are affected by that because of their sensitivities to that. And also to toxins. So anything, whether it's a natural toxic substance like a fungus, or it's a unnatural substance like chemicals like bleach and things like that, that would be extremely horrible for an amphibian to encounter. But it's just a example. They will be the first ones to be affected. So that's why they're an indicator species, and they're extremely important to all animals, because if we look at and study amphibians, like frogs, for example, and we see frogs starting to get sick or disappear or become less and less, we can then try to figure out what's going on, because that might actually go down to different animals like humans even, and we would see that there's something wrong with the planet, if that makes sense. So they're one of the first animals to become affected and kind of warn all of us that there's something going on. One good example is a lot of frogs are affected by fungus. There are fungus or fungi that affect frogs very, very, very badly, and have actually killed off a lot of frogs out there in the wild. They become very, very sick from spontaneous fungus growing in their waters or around them. And that's just one example of what can happen to frogs because they're so very sensitive. So they're very, very important. Looks great. I'm so excited. Yes, we're very excited. We've been having a really fun week. We've been extremely busy as always, but I can't wait to announce a few announcements coming up soon. So please stay tuned for further exciting announcements, you guys. So who has questions about axolotls or Ghost? Ghost is our favorite axolotl. But I might just be, I don't know. I don't know why she's my favorite, but she's just very, very drawn to her. She has a great personality. She's very goofy. Axolotls, believe it or not, do all have different personalities. I love Gremlin and Goblin too. But Ghost is kind of the, I don't know. She's just my favorite. But don't tell any of the other axolotls that either. Let's see what else is going on down here in the comments. Yes, yes, yes. So again, axolotls and all amphibians, very, very important to the natural environment, should be well known out there, even though they're not really that well known. So because they are so endangered, there are some conservation efforts being done to help them, of course. The best way that you guys can help them is by doing little things at home, and also, of course, by visiting your local zoo and aquarium that actually breeds and helps with conservation efforts to axolotls. If you're in Mexico City, I know some of you guys live in Mexico, the Chapultepec zoo in Mexico City actually does participate in axolotl conservation, right? That makes a lot of sense because they're right there in Mexico City. So how conservationists and scientists and zookeepers are helping with all of that is by cleaning up the environment where the axolotl is from, actually breeding axolotls in the care of humans. Of course, they do have lots and lots of babies every time they breed, so that's really great. And eventually they do want to hopefully re-release some of those axolotls back into the wild. Now, it's a little bit tricky because their river system is very, very not great right now. It's not a very supportive environment for them to survive. So what they're doing is actually going to other similar river systems and canals to be able to maybe re-release some of them there, see how it goes, and then hopefully the axolotls can have kind of a new section, new home. But another challenge with them is having genetic diversity because there's only so many as part of the gene pool that they're able to breed that are still like the wild axolotl, if that makes sense. They can't just breed whatever axolotls that are, in the care of humans now because it might be inbred and things like that. And of course, they have to be the wild type, the wild coloration of the axolotl because they wouldn't survive if they were her color. I hope that makes sense to you guys. There aren't any at the Miami Zoo. We're going to have to call and complain about that. They may have them in the back. Sometimes they're not on display, but they might be in the back, or they might have a similar amphibian. So not just axolotls need help, but amphibians need help all over the place, all over the planet. They're all important. So just supporting zoos and aquariums that have amphibians, typically those guys do donate or directly contribute to conservation efforts that help amphibians in general, like frog watch and all kinds of frog breeding efforts and things like that, and re-release efforts. There's so many of them. There's so many frogs and salamanders and axolotls, etc., that need our help. So just because they don't have axolotls, maybe they do, they're just not on display. But just because they don't have them doesn't mean that they don't help amphibians. So that's a great thing to do when you support your local zoo or aquarium if they have them. What goofy things does she do? Do you remember planking? Are you guys old enough to know what planking is? So she will plank. This is not her habitat that she lives in. This is just a display habitat, if you will, for live streams. I put her in here when I want you guys to see her nice and close. And she will actually, in her habitat, she has a bunch of plants. It's much, much taller. You can't see, but it's like 2 or 3 times the size, height-wise and width-wise and everything. It's huge. And she has a bunch of plants to like play with. They're plastic plants, kind of like this. And she will basically kind of get her body on top of the plants. There'll be like a bunch of plants like this. And she will just plank on top of them and like kind of have her legs like this and her eyes just looking at me. And she's just doing the weirdest positions. And so planking is, Ash, since you're asking, I didn't know if you knew what that means. Some of the adults out there know what planking is. That basically means her body is like stiff like this, sitting on top of something like this. Of course, she's in water, and that's what's actually supporting her weight. But it just looks like she's floating there like a letter T, or maybe even like 2 things here in her body. It's hard to explain. Maybe I'll take a picture for you guys and send it to you. But she does that. She a lot of times will just kind of hang out on top of the plants, which makes no sense. If she sees me walking around the room that she lives in, she'll be like, "Give me all the worms." And she'll like do this weird swim dance that she does. She's just adorable. She does all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it is really funny. She's kind of like just floating there. It looks like stiff as a board, like that. And I don't know, they're just super silly. I guess you just have to be here. But eating, they're super goofy when they eat. They kind of gulp in their food and like act like a sea monster underwater. It's awesome. I just love them. So fun fact, I actually haven't worked with axolotls that long in my career. Fairly new animal to me as far as keeping myself. I've always been interested in them, but I never actually took care of axolotls. I've taken care of all different types of aquatic amphibians and terrestrial amphibians in my career. I have more, I would say, experience with reptiles and amphibians and arachnids and other invertebrates and stuff like that more than any other animals that I worked with. But axolotls are pretty new to me, so getting to know their personalities is really fun. And now I will never not have axolotls once in a while, so I would definitely miss them. They're just wonderful animals. And thankfully becoming more popular, more well-known, because they need a lot of conservation help. So the one great thing you can do is visit your local zoo and aquarium that has amphibians in general, like we said, and also donating to those causes. There's so many amphibian type causes out there that you can help with. And like I said, simple choices at home that make a big difference, that may not seem to make a big difference, but they sure do. Things like not rinsing bleach down the storm drain, not using harsh chemicals on your lawn to get rid of pests, so pesticides and things like that. There are much better choices, much greener choices, more natural, and actually having more amphibians in your environment will help you with pests anyway. So if you don't use pesticides or poison on your lawn, you will probably have more insect eaters come on in and actually help you with that. So another animal that is great for insects, just so you know, is bats. Bats are a wonderful, wonderful animal that can naturally help you with mosquitoes and flies and all kinds of pesky bugs that you may have flying around at night and that you may not want. Another animal also that helps out with that are screech owls. Screech owls actually eat cockroaches, which are my least favorite animal on the planet. I don't mind Madagascar hissing cockroaches, but I'm really a little bit leery of wild cockroaches that we see in the United States and otherwise. The ones that fly and all of that, they're a little scary. And also, those type of roaches can carry diseases, as can flies and mosquitoes. So we need predators taking care of them. Amphibians are great for that. So frogs are great. Having frogs in your yard or toads in your yard is a great way to do that. How do you get more frogs and toads in your yard? Well, don't poison your yard. That's the first step. And another way is to actually make what's called a toad abode. Somebody coined that term a long time ago. I cannot take credit for that, but toad abode is basically little hidey holes or little caves for toads to live in. Some people make them out of basically half of a pot that you would put a plant in. You can get some of those that are kind of toad sized and make little hides for toads to live in because they actually need somewhere to shelter at night. Most toads and frogs are nocturnal. You can also make a toad abode or a garden situation with all kinds of items, right, for those animals to kind of seek shelter in that will invite toads and frogs into your life. And you can also like I said, not to poison stuff. Poisoning their food is not great, and poisoning the lawn in general is not great. So there are other methods for sure. Also, with bats, you can actually put up a bat box, which will encourage bats to live in your backyard, which is really cool, number one, and also a great form of pest control. And the same thing with the screech owls. You can put up owl nest boxes. Larger owls will eat rodents, which is great, and smaller owls like screech owls will actually eat the roaches that are very pesky as well. Pretty neat. So those are some tips from me to you. And there are many, many more, I'm sure, available online and everything like that. And lots of people know more ways than me to help out toads and frogs and bats and owls in your own backyard. So that's just a couple of different ways. Let me know if you have any questions about that. So they are very important animals, and axolotls are very important too in their natural environment. They help to keep mosquito populations down too because they eat mosquito larvae and some other pesky bug larvae too. All carnivores in their natural environment, that is their job, is to keep populations of prey animals down, and very, very makes the environment very healthy that way, right? Keeping everything in check, keeping it under control. Hello, Richard. Oh my goodness. Richard says, a cockroach in flight landed on my wife's face one night. It was rather hilarious. Well, that happened. I bet it wasn't hilarious for her. I'm very sorry that you're shaming her with that story. Sorry, Richard's wife. I don't know your name, but my heart goes out to you because cockroaches are terrifying. That happened to me in the shower once. That's all I'm going to say about that. That happened to me in the shower. Yeah, not great. Mortified ever since. And actually, I was already scared of them before that. So I'm getting better about my cockroach phobia. But as you might imagine, that was traumatizing. So let's move on to our next animal. It's actually another very misunderstood animal. Speaking of misunderstood creatures, I'm going to get me a drink of water before I run out of speaking ability. So this is not a cockroach. That would have been a cool segue, but it is not. How do you hold an axolotl? That is a good question. You really don't. I don't recommend holding. That's a great thing to talk about. So glad you asked. So holding amphibians of any kind, especially wild amphibians, should be left to the professionals only. Why would professionals hold them? Well, to study them, to, of course, count them, look over, measure all the things that we need to do as scientists, right? Otherwise, amphibians should be left alone in the wild, unless there's an emergency. You have a toad in the road. A toad on the road. How sad. And you're trying to help them across. You can probably just scare them across the road. If it's a safe road, please don't jump out in the middle of the highway and tell everybody that Amanda from Once in a While told you to go save toads in the road. Don't do that to yourself. But if it's a safe, country road somewhere and you're in the middle of nowhere and there's a bunch of frogs and you want to help them across the road, sure, go for it. But the best thing to do is kind of scare them across. Don't pick them up. I can't think of any other emergency type situation. Maybe it landed on you and you need to just brush it off of you. The most important thing is to leave them alone, though, if you can, because our hands are very gross. Humans are nasty. Humans have oil. We are very dirty animals. Primates, like humans, are gross. Sorry to break it to you, we're nasty. As you may know, there's a pandemic going on, which should prove it to you that we are kind of to be avoided right now. No, but seriously, in the wild, amphibians should not be picked up because we can hurt them with our oil. Our skin has a lot of things in it, in our skin, that is bad for amphibians. Because remember, amphibians have slimy skin that absorbs everything. So if we haven't washed our hands in a while and we have oil, or if we have soap or, heaven forbid, toxic chemicals on our hands, and we go to like hand sanitizer and we go to pick up a frog that we really like in the yard, you can actually really harm that frog that way. Also, frogs use a great and powerful method to stay safe from their enemies, and it's peeing all over them. So a frog and a toad and all those guys, they will actually release a lot of water or urine or whatever it may be. I like to think of it as just water, but we all know it's not. But they release all of that to basically deter their enemies and surprise their enemies, like, oh, that's gross, I'm going to let it go. And it does often work with humans. But if you think about it, they're actually losing that weapon against their next predator that may or may not pick them up. So if you pick up a toad or a frog and it pees on you, you've given it oil from your skin to the frog or toad, right? And it's peed. It's lost a lot of water content, number one, which it probably needed to survive. And also it doesn't have that weapon for the next time it gets grabbed by an actual predator. So leave them alone, look at them, observe them, love them from a distance, take a photo, whatever you want. Oh, I can see another emergency. Maybe you're saving it from your dog or your cat. Definitely done that before. So that's okay. The best thing to do before picking up a toad or a frog, if you happen to be a biologist, scientist, or you're saving its life, is to rinse your hands really well first. That is very, very, very important for frogs, just so you know. So how do we pick up an axolotl? You don't really do that. I don't pick her up. I actually transfer her usually with like a pitcher or some kind of jug, and just kind of scoop her up gently, and then I'll transfer her either to here or back to her home behind the scenes, right? So that's how we transfer an axolotl. We can't just pick her up with our hands because they're fully aquatic. It's like picking up a fish. Number one, she might slip out of my hand and she might get injured. Number two, I might harm her with my toxic human hands, right? Oily fingers. Or she might fall out of my hands, etc., and she can't breathe out of the water. So all those things, we don't do that. It's just like handling a fish. You would either, some people use a little net. I don't usually do that because they tend to get a little spooked and kind of thrash around a little bit that way. So I kind of gently scoop them up with like a pitcher or a jug. Does that make sense, Ash? That was a good question. Thank you for your question. So segueing into our next beautiful animal, we're going from Mexico to Arizona now. Once she settles down, I will show you. She's a little bit hyper tonight. It's one of our beautiful, beautiful misunderstood animals. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to wait for her to settle down because these animals are actually pretty fragile, as much as some people are afraid of them. Give me a second, you guys. Animal safety first, right? It's Blondie. Blondie's back to see you guys. This is Blondie, the Arizona blonde tarantula. Arizona blonde tarantulas come from Arizona, like the name says, and also surrounding states, not just Arizona. They kind of come from deserty states in the United States, but Arizona is the main place that you can find the Arizona blonde tarantula, of course, right? They were very, very appropriately named. She is gorgeous. She is very, very kind of reddish blonde, just like the name Arizona blonde, right? There we go. Now you can see her a little better, and Ghost is going to come up and say hello as well. And these guys are extremely misunderstood, and a lot of people are scared of tarantulas and spiders in general. That's called arachnophobia. But we want to encourage you guys to actually really like spiders. Now, you may not want to pick them up, and I don't really encourage that either. In fact, that goes for any type of wild animal you see in your own environment or anywhere you may be visiting. Wild animals should be left alone unless there's an emergency or you are a scientist studying them or some kind of animal professional helping them out. Like myself, I have definitely helped people remove tarantulas and snakes out of their own environment to help save that animal's life so it does not become killed by those people or injured, or because people just want to make sure it goes to a more appropriate place. I've done that many, many times in my life, but I don't recommend doing that if you're not a professional or know what you're doing, because you may harm the animal and the animal may try to defend itself and then harm you. And it wouldn't be the animal's fault in that case, right? Because they're just trying to survive. Let's see if I can hold my arm up. She keeps moving around. She's giving me a little bit of a workout today with my arms, and that is okay. She's usually very inactive. I don't know what is going on with her, but that is okay. You can see how she walks. Tarantulas are pretty amazing animals. So these guys get a really bad rep, like I said. Did you know that there are no deadly tarantulas to humans? There are a few spiders that are extremely dangerous to humans in the United States. Those include the black widow spider, the brown recluse, and the brown widow, actually. Those should definitely be avoided, and if you have a problem with those guys, I do recommend calling a professional to help you out, to maybe remove them or help you out in some way. However, even those dangerous spiders get a really bad rep for killing a lot of people. They really don't. So it's very, very, very rare that someone actually dies from a black widow bite. A lot of people think that you would just die immediately or something like that. Not true. There are anti-venoms for all of those spiders that I listed in the United States, and there are typically anti-venoms for other deadly spiders in other countries too. So typically, if you get to the hospital, you're going to be just fine. I'm not saying that it's not a serious situation, because it actually is. Getting bitten by any of those spiders that I just listed is definitely a call for going to the emergency room. Do not take me the wrong way. But my point is that those guys are really the only ones to worry about. Otherwise, spiders in general, at least in the United States, are not going to harm really anyone. They don't want to harm you. If you do get bitten by any of the other ones, like a tarantula, you're going to be okay. It may sting a little bit, kind of similarly to a bee sting. If you've ever been stung by like a honeybee or something like that, it's not really a big deal unless you're allergic. But I don't know of anybody that's actually allergic to tarantulas. I hear about it a lot, but I've never really heard of a case. Correct me if I'm wrong, all you entomologists out there or anybody that knows. But to my knowledge, nobody has ever passed away from a tarantula bite, ever. So they're really not to be feared. Tarantulas are our friends. They don't want to harm us. They just want to be left alone. They don't even have brains, so they're not out to get you. They're not thinking about that whatsoever. Sorry, I'm just trying to hold my hand steady so you guys can see her kind of in an awkward position with. I'm just going to snuggle up next to Ghost, I guess. But these guys are our friends. They help us out with a lot of roach problems, like we already talked about. We don't really like roaches, right, for a lot of reasons. At least I don't. And even if you do like them, they are potentially giving you diseases and things like that. So it's not good to have too many roaches or flies or other bugs. So these guys help us out with all of that. And if we don't have predators that take care of roaches and all those guys, then we have way too many of them, right? You guys are asking a bunch of questions. I'm going to, forgive me, I can't highlight your question right now because I'm going to make sure that our tarantula here stays safe. She's actually a very fragile animal, and I don't want her to fall. Let me see. Blondie, you're so excited to see Blondie. She is a gorgeous tarantula, isn't she? So beautiful. Does she recognize you? I would say no. Tarantulas don't have a brain, so I don't really think that they think about all that stuff. Now, I know that there are other types of spiders, like jumping spiders, that do actually learn. But as far as we know, tarantulas don't really technically learn anything. So I don't think she's memorized my face or my voice or anything like that. But they do learn to tolerate human handling in general. And maybe she can tell when it's me or not. I don't really know. I can't ask her and she can't tell me. We don't speak the same language, right? But tarantulas are pretty simple animals as far as their learning abilities go. That doesn't mean they're worse or better than us. It just means they're different. So I don't think so. But she's a very calm tarantula most of the time. Does she like to be petted like a dog or other pet? I would probably say no. These guys are not a domesticated species. She learns to tolerate kind of sitting still on my hand, but I'm not going to reach out and like pet her. She is pretty good about being held up to show her fangs, and I'll do that at the end before we go. Well, before we put her down, I guess. Do they make webs like other spiders? So they do make webs, but not quite like other spiders. So this species of tarantula specifically, and most species of tarantula, especially desert-dwelling tarantulas and larger tarantulas in general, not all of them, but a lot of them are going to be terrestrial. So they're on the ground, and they do also live subterrestrially underground in like a tunnel or a hole underground or underneath some kind of fallen log or something like that to stay safe. And typically they're not going to really come out very often. It's called a burrow. They live in a burrow. But they will make webbing inside of their burrow, kind of like a carpet looking web. And it kind of looks to me like Halloween web, you know, like the cobweb stuff that we put up for Halloween. Looks just like that. It doesn't look like a web of an orb weaver spider or a garden spider up in a tree or something like that with like the the lines and everything that's so very pretty, like Charlotte's Web, etc. They'd make kind of a carpet web instead. And they will do that for comfort. They will kind of make a bed out of that webbing or carpet, like I said. And they also do that for being able to feel vibration. So that helps them to sense animals that come in that are dangerous, or animals that come in that might be food. These guys are carnivores, of course, and they do eat insects most of the time, or other invertebrates too, like maybe other arachnids, etc. But what will tell them that another animal is approaching, whether it's danger or food, will be the web. And the web can then give them vibrations to the rest of their body. So they're extremely sensitive to movement. In fact, a tarantula, their sense of touch is basically their one and only best sense. They are covered in hair all over their body. That's something that tarantulas are very, very famous for. I'm sorry if I'm shaking because I'm holding my hand up in an awkward manner. But they're covered in hairs. And they are also extremely sensitive to touch and movement. So anything in the air that disturbs her hair, she would actually sense that. And anything at the web, she would actually feel the vibrations from her web, just like most spiders, right? Most spiders do use their sense of touch to hunt or to sense danger. And her hair also protects her. She can use it as kind of like a coat, just like mammals do, except for it's not going to be used for keeping her warm, because this is actually a cold-blooded animal, not a warm-blooded animal. So it doesn't keep her warm. She just stays warm by having a warm environment around her, like a desert, right? But these guys will have that hair for protection all over their body, kind of like an armor. And also, if she feels really upset, she might rub her back legs on her abdomen, which is kind of her hind end there. And then some of those hairs will fly into the air, and it's pretty much invisible in the air, but they do fly into the air, and then they will go into the eyes and nose and face in general of a potential predator. So if a predator is sneaking up behind the spider and they sense it with their sense of touch, maybe the breathing of the predator or just the movement in general, they can flick those hairs into the air and cause the hairs to go into a cloud in the air. And then all of a sudden the animal has like basically a bunch of hairs in their eyes that are very, very sharp. Kind of like eyelashes. If you've ever experienced an eyelash in your eye, it's terrible. Imagine hundreds of eyelashes that you can't really see, but all of a sudden they're in your eye and very irritating. And then, of course, the spider can then crawl away and be safe. That is a great defense mechanism. So hair as a weapon. That's pretty neat. So hair as armor, hair as a weapon at the same time. Pretty incredible. What do we feed her? She eats crickets. So crickets are her favorite food. I've tried mixing up her food items as well, because it's actually really good for tarantulas and animals in general to get a variety of food for their health. But she typically refuses any dubia roaches, Madagascar hissing cockroaches, or mealworms, superworms. She doesn't like anything else except for crickets. Yeah, so we've tried to vary it up, but she eats the crickets really well, and we make sure and gut load our crickets. So it's important, if you feed crickets to your animals, whether they be lizards or anything, even axolotls can eat crickets too. If we offer them to her, she will eat them. But it's important that you gut load them first with all kinds of healthy food items for your crickets. Otherwise, you're basically feeding your animal a shell, because crickets are mostly shell. But if you gut load them and feed them lots of healthy foods, they become a lot more, full of nutrients. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? If you need more information on gut loading your crickets, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to tell you. Yes, live crickets. So most tarantulas will not eat dead crickets or bugs. They have to have some kind of movement stimulation to understand that it's food. And that goes back to their main sense being their sense of touch. If they're not stimulated to think it's food, they probably won't really go after it. So yes, live crickets for sure. They do have eyes, by the way. I was going to say they do have eyes to see a little bit, but their vision is very poor. They see shadows and movement only, we think. And they don't have great vision like a jumping spider or anything like that. Jumping spiders have pretty good vision. But these guys have 8 eyes, for this species at least, 8 eyes on their cephalothorax, which is kind of like their head. They're in like a little tiny cluster right in the front there. Right, I know it kind of looks like a little spot on top of her head. Those are all her eyes, and they're kind of positioned to where she can kind of see all over the place, but very poorly. Her vision is based on movement and shadows, and she does not see any color. These guys do not see color whatsoever. They don't really see very well at all. Their sense of touch is how they basically view the world instead. So their eyesight is there, but it's not great. It's just kind of a backup, and that sense of touch with all those hairs, man, they can really get a feel literally of what's going on around them just by their sense of touch. They're amazing. Did you know that? Well, you probably knew this. Everybody knows that tarantulas and all spiders have 8 legs, but they also have 2 arms. They have 2 arm-like appendages in the front. They're shorter than their legs. So 8 walking legs, 2 arm-like appendages that we call pedipalps. That goes for all arachnids like scorpions and ticks as well. They have pedipalps. And they also have 8 eyes, like I said before. Most tarantula species have 8 eyes. They have 2 main body parts, the cephalothorax and the abdomen. Abdomen is behind, and cephalothorax is kind of like their head and body midsection combined. And then they also have 2 fangs. So they have chelicerae, which is where the venom is actually stored. This is a venomous animal. I'm going to show you her fangs. So the chelicerae is what stores the venom. And that's kind of like her mustache looking thing in the front. Kind of looks like a handlebar mustache right in the center. And the fangs are actually underneath, and they keep them underneath when they're walking and they don't need to use them. They kind of just swing them underneath their chin, what I call a chin, underneath their body. See the fangs there? You guys see that? Pretty awesome. Their fangs are huge. I'm going to scratch my nose. Sorry about that, guys. They have 2 black fangs. You can probably see them. You see how nice she is? Let me hold her like that. She's such a nice tarantula. And the venom is stored in those big bulbous chelicerae, which are the front of her face. But when they're not using their fangs, they just kind of store them underneath their bodies. So 2 body parts, 2 fangs, 2 chelicerae, 2 arms, 8 legs, and they even have claws. So all tarantulas have 2 claws on each leg and 2 claws on each arm. So they have claws very similar to a cat. They are retractable claws. In this species, they don't really climb, but in other species that might be an arboreal species, like a pink-toe tarantula or a Venezuelan sun tiger or a goody sapphire tree-dwelling tarantula, all those guys are arboreal, living in the trees. They use their claws for climbing. This species doesn't really have the climbing ability. Their body is too heavy to do that very well. She might climb up on a stick or something like that and then right back down. But this species, this girl rather, the species will live underground in a burrow most of the time, and certainly on the ground terrestrially in the desert. So the only reason they usually come out is if food is very scarce and they're feeling extremely hungry, but that would be kind of rare because these guys don't eat very often. So a tarantula like this can go 6 months without a meal with very little consequences. That isn't ideal for them. But here once in a while, we do usually offer food about every other week to our tarantulas, which is more than plenty, but that would be a good reason to leave. They just haven't eaten in 6 months and they need to venture out. Another reason that you might see tarantulas leaving their burrows are actually male tarantulas looking for mates. Males will leave the safety of their burrow when it is time to breed. They do have breeding seasons. Each tarantula species may have different breeding seasons, so don't quote me on when that is for this species. I don't know. I'm not an entomologist and I don't remember when they breed. Here in Texas, tarantulas do come out certain times of the year. I believe it's in the fall. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's in the fall. I will look this up for you guys. That is when you'll see tarantulas running around, and it's always males looking for mates because you see, males grow very fast. They grow a lot faster than females, and they don't live as long as females. They only live for about 2 to 5 years for most Texas tarantulas, for example. Large tarantulas like this. This isn't a Texas tarantula. It's an Arizona blonde tarantula, but they're very similar. But the male won't live very long, so he has very little time to be able to procreate. So when he feels that it is breeding time, he will leave the safety of his burrow and risk his life to find females, and they will use their sense of smell to find the lady friends. Isn't that cool? So that is usually what people see when they see tarantulas running around. Don't worry, they're not looking to harm you. They're just looking for love. Can they smell? Yes. To my knowledge, they can smell, but their sense of smell is very, very different than us. They don't really smell with like a nose. And I will definitely do more research on that, but I know that they can smell like pheromones and hormones and things like that. They don't really use their sense of smell, to my knowledge, to hunt or anything like that. It's going to be all sense of touch and a little bit of vision. Why is her leg up? I think she's just looking to walk forward. Maybe she's waving hello. Say hello, Blondie. I think she's just kind of like, where did the ground go? Hello, Kelly, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for asking your questions and commenting. So that is Blondie. I'm gonna rest my arm a little bit here. Hope you guys don't mind. There we go. So another very beautiful and misunderstood animal. A lot of people are afraid of spiders. I don't really blame you. Some spiders are harmful, potentially. But the best thing to do for spiders is just leave them alone. If you see them, leave them alone. They don't want to harm you. They're not thinking about harming you. They're probably pretty scared of you. So, you know, Don't harm them. They are very important to the environment. If you ever have a spider problem in your home, I would definitely call a professional to help you out with that. Okay, so nobody gets hurt. Yes. Blondie, she is so beautiful. Let me know if anybody has any other questions about her. Spiders are one of my favorite types of animals in the world because, again, they're very misunderstood and extremely important animals. Did you know that they're a lot more fragile than people think? Tarantulas might be really huge and kind of scary to some people, but they're pretty fragile animals. She would not do well if she fell down. This animal is not designed to climb up high and take a fall. It's definitely not a climbing animal at all. So I'm being very, very careful not to drop her, of course. But there goes Ghost showing how she swims. But that is a lot, much higher concern than her hurting me or her hurting anyone. Ash asks, can you walk her on a leash? No, we wouldn't do that because that would definitely probably not be comfortable for her and could even harm her if the leash were to squeeze or anything like that. So we don't, that's not really necessary. So we don't do that. We just walk them on our hands like this. Super cute. I love her different colorations. She's got like reddish blonde and kind of dark brown as well. She kind of reminds me of when some of us dye our hair very, very light blonde and then don't do the roots for a while, or like an ombre look, very pretty. So we named her Blondie, the Arizona blonde tarantula. So she's pretty cool. Ghost looks interested in Blondie. I'm not sure what she's thinking over there, but we're not going to get any ideas. Ghost would eat invertebrates like crickets and other animals, but of course we're not going to try that out with Blondie. That would not be great. They would not get along. So these are solitary type animals. They don't even get along with their own species. In fact, when those males do eventually find a mate, a female mate, right? They are risking their life, not only venturing out into the wilderness or wherever to be able to potentially get eaten by a predator or hit by a car, killed by a person, all kinds of things, all kinds of situations that can harm them, risking their safety, right? They're also risking their safety when they meet the love of their life. Because guess what? Tarantulas most of the time are definitely cannibals as well. It may be worth it to him, but after mating, she may decide that he's also a snack. And that will help her to have enough food to basically procreate herself and be able to feed her young. Oh my goodness. Blondie like the band. Yes, we have a lot of musically themed animal names as well as all kinds of things if you pay attention and see our shows. And once again, if you do like what you see, we do have tipping capabilities down below with Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal as well, which is not listed, but it's there for you guys as well. And onceinawhile.com also has our Amazon wish list if you want to donate some items to our animals like Blondie, Ghost, and more, right? So that is a really fun way to help us out. Another free way to help us out is by subscribing to YouTube if you haven't already. So thanks so very much to those of you that have already subscribed. And share the videos with any of your teacher friends. Let all of your teacher friends know and all the parents out there that have kiddos in school, especially if you are in any kind of virtual school, we do have Zoom Room animal encounters where we can cater to any of your curriculums. We can actually have you guys meet some animals in a private Zoom room. Those are a lot of fun for classrooms. And if you happen to be in the San Antonio area, don't forget, we can also bring the spiders, the axolotls, and other animals to you in person if you are in San Antonio, Texas, or around the same area. So we're not done yet, though. I just wanted to make sure and throw that out there while we're holding our beautiful tarantula. And we will say see you later to our 8-legged friend here. 8 legs, 2 arms. Remember, a lot of people don't know that tarantulas have arms as well, but you can actually count them now. There's 8 legs there and 2 little arms in the front called pedipalps. They use their arms for grabbing onto their food. How do they eat? Well, they actually use venom to eat. Venom is not just to like bite us. In fact, it's not for biting us. It's not really for defense. A tarantula would much rather either hide, run away, use their hairs to, maybe irritate the eyes of their enemies as a weapon, or etc. to defend themselves. Biting would actually be very rare for a tarantula in general, and their venom would be wasted on you if they were to give you some of their venom. Their venom is only for their food consumption. So when they happen to find a prey, like a cricket, for example, or something like that, they will grab onto it with their arms. Sometimes their front legs as well will help to hold them steady. They will basically swing their fangs forward. I'm like, what is that word? Swing their fangs forward and pierce their prey with the fangs, envenomate the prey with their venom, of course. And the venom will then take effect to paralyze that bug and then start to process the bug from the inside out. So a tarantula does not have teeth to chew. They do have 2 fangs, but not technically teeth. Their fangs are only for delivering venom. And then their mouth itself is more like a sucker mouth, and it's kind of like a straw. And it does suck up their food once the food is liquefied. So after the venom has taken effect on the food, the cricket, for example, and liquefied that animal, they're able to then drink the bug as a bug smoothie afterwards. Delicious. And that's how tarantula eats. But that is what their venom is essentially for. It's not really for defense per se. It's more for digestion and getting their food ready to eat. Pretty neat. Okay, so we are going to put her down so she can rest. She did a great job. Thanks, Blondie, for being a great animal ambassador for spiders and tarantulas. And we'll see her later, right? Maybe another show. She's actually kind of a frequent animal on our shows because she's such a good spider. We do have other tarantulas here once in a while as well. I'm just going to check my camera's timer. Those of you that watch the show often know that I have to do that periodically. I'm going to do that right now. There it is. And let's meet our final animal of the night. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Ash says super show. It's only super because you're joining us, Ash. So good to see you guys as always. And once again, if you're just joining us, my name is Amanda, and we are about to meet our final animal species. This is Once in a Wild. We do broadcast every single Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and that is a free show for you guys every single week. And we do have all kinds of things happening and announcements coming soon, so get excited. Once in a Wild is here to stay, you guys. That's all we have to say about that. But get excited because we are really excited too. I'm going to take a drink really quick. And let's go ahead and meet our final animal. She hasn't been on the show in a while, but she has been on before. Bear with me, you guys. This is real life. I'm going to have to open the lid first, as always. So all of our animals have like travel enclosures that they reside in when they're traveling or waiting to be on the Zoom. So they can be nice and comfortable. And this animal is certainly taking a nap, so please forgive. This is LouLou the Tegu. It's been a minute since she's been on the show, right? But she's been on before. She's going to take a look at Ghost, I guess. So LouLou is a species that's found in Colombia. This is a Colombian black and white Tegu. Sometimes she gets a little bit wiggly with me, but she tends to settle down afterwards. I'm going to make sure she's nice and comfortable. Tegus are extremely intelligent lizards. So a lot of times they're just trying to kind of test you to see what they can get away with. I also probably just woke her up from a nap, so please forgive. But this is part of animal training and handling that we do here once in a while. With Tegus, you don't really want to grab them and hold them still. So what you have to do is kind of just let them walk on your hands. Kind of like the tarantula now that I think about it. But they are such smart lizards that they will try to get away with all kinds of stuff, almost like dogs. It's okay, LouLou. You're doing fine. You're doing fine. So this is part of the job, you guys, is actually having lizards throw little tantrums, if you will. And Tegus are kind of known for that sometimes. And female Tegus tend to be a little bit grumpy sometimes. Okay, it's all right. But she's a real animal. A lot of people want a lizard for a pet, and they don't take into account some of the work that it takes to tame them and handle them. And of course, she's not being aggressive or anything like that. She just probably wants to run around, but I don't want to make her think that that's okay. So I'm going to let her settle down. She's perfectly fine now. Sometimes they're just hyped up for whatever reason anyway, but they're animals and they're wild animals. They're not domesticated, right? Like a lot of our animals are. So this is LouLou, the Colombian black and white Tegu. They are beautiful lizards found in, of course, Colombia. All of our animals today, we learned where they come from. Mexico is where the axolotl comes from. The Arizona blonde tarantula comes from the United States. So Arizona and surrounding dry states like that, and they're a desert dwelling species. This is a jungle type animal. They live in rainforests and different types of environments like that, or different forested regions that are quite rainy in Central and South America, especially Colombia. That's where this species specifically comes from. Excuse me. This is quite a common lizard to see in Colombia. In fact, they're not endangered like the axolotl, which is great. Neither is the Arizona blonde tarantula, now that I think about it. These guys are doing quite well. They are omnivores. They eat all kinds of different animals and plants. They can eat both fruits, sometimes vegetables as well. They love to eat fruits, though, like bananas and all kinds of fallen fruits from the trees and the jungles of Central and South America. Colombia, right? I'll just stay to Colombia since they're a Colombian Tegu. But there's other different types of Tegus, which is why I keep saying that. There are different types of Tegus that come from different places in Central and South America. But this is a Colombian, of course, so we'll just stick to Colombia, I guess. But Colombia does have jungly regions, kind of tropical environments and things like that where they live. And there are, of course, a lot of fruit trees. So when fruits fall to the ground, because this is not a tree climbing animal either, just like the tarantula, they don't really climb at all. They have short, stubby legs. They can run really fast if they want to. But they're going to wait for fruit to fall to the ground below where they are. That's where they might eat it. These guys also eat other animals. In fact, they are really good scavengers. Scavengers means animals, of course, that eat dead animals. So they're not super active hunters. They might eat insects and slower animals like that. But more specifically, they are known to eat carrion, which is going to be your dead animals. But that's very important to the environment because somebody has to eat those dead animals before they cause diseases and things like that. So they're scavengers, kind of like a vulture is a scavenger. So they'll eat that. They'll also eat eggs. Eggs end up being one of their absolute favorite foods. In fact, they will raid nests of other lizards and birds and all kinds of animals to eat eggs. In fact, that is LouLou's favorite food as well. If I need her to eat something that she doesn't necessarily like as much, I will put some egg on top of it. That is raw egg, just raw, on top of the food item that I need her to eat, and she will eat it right up because it tastes like egg. So Ash, her name is LouLou, which is Loulou. When we first got this lizard, we weren't sure what gender she was, so we named her Lou, Lizard Lou. But we then called her LouLou because it turned out that she was a girl. These guys are what we call dimorphic. You can tell male from female very, very easily by looking at them once they've reached a certain age. Number one, she's not very large. I know she looks huge, but for a Colombian Tegu, she's actually pretty small. So we know she's female that way because males are much larger. Also, males have really big, wide cheeks. That's right, cheeks. So it looks like they're full of bubble gum or something big inside of their cheeks. So they're blowing up their cheeks like that. The males have big fatty deposits on either side of their face. So their cheeks end up being really wide. Her cheeks are pretty narrow, so they are not male cheeks. So we know she's a girl that way as well. So they are a dimorphic species. So she's a girl. So we just stuck with the name of LouLou instead of Lou. Super cute. But she's definitely a LouLou. It very much suits her. I don't know why, it just does. So LouLou, her background is that she's a rescue. So many of our animals here at Once in a Wild are rescue animals. And what I mean by that are animals that have either been abandoned or sick and we brought them back to health, or they just needed a home in general. Maybe they're animals that have been handed down to us from other previous owners. There's lots of stories. LouLou was actually found running around the streets of Dallas. When we used to live in Dallas, we live in San Antonio now, but we lived in Dallas before that. When I was working out there, and Ricky, my fiance, was working out there as well. This animal was actually caught up by animal control roaming around a neighborhood in Dallas. And of course, this is not an animal that comes from Dallas. Like I mentioned, this is a Colombian species. So certainly could not have been a wild animal there, right? She's a wild animal, but not from there. So that's what we call an invasive species. Just like the carp and tilapia fish that we talked about before is an invasive species that inhabits Mexico, affecting the axolotl. Right over here, ghost species, that's hard to say. But anyway, those are an example of another type of invasive species. But Colombian tegus and Argentine tegus actually affect the United States sometimes, especially in Florida, where Ash lives, actually. I know you guys live in Florida. That's pretty cool. I love Florida. But there are Argentine tegus living down there that shouldn't be there, that were either released pets or escaped pets, etc. And that is not good for the environment because animals don't have any way to adapt to defending themselves from such a large lizard like this that shouldn't be there, etc. That is a long story, but that is part of that. But so she was running around in Dallas where she shouldn't belong. And we think either an escaped pet or a released pet, which is extremely irresponsible, right? It's one thing if it's an escaped pet and it was an accident. Accidents do happen, of course. That happens to almost anyone. Dogs get out of people's yards all the time, right? It does happen. Maybe she was kept outside and she just dug out of her pen or broke out of something, or maybe she was accidentally let out the door. Who knows? Or she could have been abandoned. So some people do adopt exotic animals or purchase them with good intentions sometimes, and then sometimes they change their mind and they don't know what to do with them, so they just put them outside. And they think, okay, it's better off outside, living in the wild to survive on its own, free, I guess, than it is to live here with me where I don't want it. I don't know what their story was. Who knows? She can't tell me, right? I don't speak her language. But that is very irresponsible. It's also very illegal. It is not legal to release a non-native species into an environment where it doesn't belong, because it can actually harm other animals and the environment in general if they don't belong there. And that's because the environment hasn't been able to adapt to those animals. So prey animals do not have any way to defend themselves against animals. They don't have any adaptations to defend themselves. That makes sense? Except for like flying away or something like that. So this animal would eat like eggs of other animals and just cause a lot of issues. So we don't know what happened, but we know she was found. And then animal control actually contacted me and let me know that she was available for adoption. I went over to see her. She was about a little less than half this size when I adopted her. We didn't know the gender yet. She was still quite young. And on top of that, she had lost her tail. You can probably see where her tail's very dark and all of a sudden it is kind of light, almost white colored. From that section up is all the tail that she actually had when we got her. So part of her tail was missing, which is a defense mechanism. I believe it was lost during the catch up when they caught her up, because I'm sure she was very, very frightened when she was being caught up by those people who, of course, had great intentions and weren't trying to harm her. But they're wild animals and they're scared. So losing the tail is a great defense mechanism. So that's what happened, I believe, in the catch up. But luckily, they do regenerate their tails, just like axolotls can. And axolotls can actually take it to the next level and regenerate anything, right? Like we talked about. But tegus and other lizards can lose their tail and then regenerate the tail eventually. It did take a long time for her tail to grow, though. It took about, I think, 6 months or so for her tail to grow back. So it takes a lot of energy. So it's not an ideal situation for them to lose their tail at all. Takes a lot of fat from their body, fat storage and things like that from a lot of lizards. It's very important for survival if you have tough times and can't find food. But luckily, she ended up with us here once in a while, where she's going to remain for the rest of her life in the best of health that we can possibly give, right? And she's a fantastic animal ambassador. When we first got her, she was quite the wild woman. She would try to bite me and scurry away and run away, and she did not like to be held. So we've trained her over time to tolerate human handling, and she's come quite a long way. But that's pretty common with tegus who escape or are out there in nature to run amok in the wild. They've kind of gone back to their wild tendencies. Maybe she was always like that. Maybe that's why the original person that had her got rid of her. Maybe she was aggressive and they didn't know how to train. These animals are extremely intelligent and very, very tameable and trainable, as you can see. Every animal is different. And every human, may be different, and maybe not everybody has the skills to train a lizard, and that's okay. I'm really happy to have her. You can see her beautiful tongue coming out of her mouth. Kind of looks like a snake's tongue, but a lot bigger, right? They do have a forked tongue to be able to sense smells. That forked tongue can smell directionally as well. Now, how they do that is by sticking out the tongue. The tongue will pick up scent particles in the air or sometimes on the ground. If she were to lick the ground like that, they pick up scent particles, and then the tongue goes back into their mouth and rubs against the roof of their mouth, where they have a special organ called a Jacobson's organ. It's like a little pocket inside of their roof of their mouth, and that will explain to their brain what they're actually sensing with their sense of smell. So their sense of smell is almost like how we see, especially for snakes. Snakes extremely use their sense of smell to get around and sense the world around them. This type of lizard, the tegu, has an amazing forked tongue for sensing smells. They can also use their tongue to taste as well. And they have amazing hearing. They have beautiful ears on the side of their head there. They're kind of like little circles. It's kind of hard to see in this lighting. But her ears are there. There they are. You can see the ear pocket there. They don't have like the flappy part of their ear like a mammal has, but they do have ear holes. And they hear wonderfully. They also see very, very well as well. So they smell, they taste, they see, they hear, and of course she can feel me touching her. So they have all 5 senses. And like I said, they're extremely aware of what's going on around them and extremely smart, very, very intelligent. What else do you guys have to say? Can she hear? Yep, I answered that question. They hear very well. She's got amazing hearing abilities. That is very different than a snake as well. Snakes do not have external ears, so they cannot hear external noises as far as we know. And snakes can feel vibrations because they have a great sense of feeling and touch, though. Here's a good question. Are the markings different on each one? On each tegu? Yes, they are. So this goes for all reptiles and most animals in general. Each animal has a different pattern. So that's one way you can actually tell them apart. That's not every animal species. For example, our wood ducks. Our wood ducks pretty much look exactly the same. The two females. We have two females and one male. Our Pekin ducks look the same as well. They're both white. But animals that have like a pattern like this, almost every single individual is going to have a totally different pattern, just like a fingerprint. And it's certainly the case in the tegu for sure. What does her habitat look like at our place? Good question. So of course she doesn't live in her travel enclosure all the time. She's just in a travel enclosure now, which is basically just a great big tub that's been modified for her. She has a towel to snuggle up in. Tegus are really funny about their towels. They like to hide underneath things, especially at night, and go to sleep. They're an extremely diurnal type lizard, which means they're only active during the day and not at night. So she was ready to go to bed, and that's probably why she's like, put me down now. But I don't want to encourage this behavior because that's just going to teach her that she gets put down for that behavior. So when she's calm again, I'm going to go ahead and put her away for being good. There we go. Oh, nope, not yet. A little bit more running on the hands. You can see how she moves. But again, I don't want to encourage this behavior, so I'm just ignoring it and kind of just going with it. I'm not going to grab her up and make her feel bad or feel like she's being grabbed. That's going to scare her. It's all right, LouLou. But it's kind of cool that you guys are going to get to see this behavior because I don't really recommend tegus for most people as pets because they're a lot of work. You have to train them on how to behave and be handled. See that? But again, I'm not going to grab her. She's just sitting on my hands like this. I'm going to let her calm down. And when they're calm is when you want to actually give them the reward of getting down. Yes, I know. But she's telling me that she's had a little bit of enough of this session, and that's okay. She can let me know that. I'm going to listen to her. You can see that beautiful tongue. And as soon as she's nice and calm, we're going to go ahead and reward her. Everybody say see you later to LouLou. Sorry that was kept a little short, but she's just not in the mood tonight, and that is okay. So the more handling like that, the better. The more sessions like that where she learns how to kind of calm down and then she gets what she wants. Positive reinforcement, right? Very, very good. Okay, LouLou, good job. And I will answer your question in just a second. I'm going to put her away and make sure she's nice and secure so we don't have any lizards on the loose in the studio. So Ash was asking, what does her habitat look like at our place? So of course she is in a travel enclosure right now, which is like a big tub that's been modified for reptiles with a towel, like I said, so she can snuggle up and take a nap. I guess she's a little cranky. But behind the scenes, she has a 200-gallon equivalent tank, which is modified for lizards. And she has a whole lot of room to run around. In fact, we are actually working on building our Tegu and our monitor an outdoor pen as well, so they can have some outside time too, which is really important for most reptiles to get some natural sun and UV rays. But behind the scenes, she has, like I said, a 200-gallon enclosure with lights on top of it, which are UV lights and heat lights. And she has a hide to go sleep under at night. She has mulch to live on, which she loves to dig in as well. And she digs a lot, especially in the wintertime. They like to kind of dig and kind of bury themselves and things like that. And let's see what else. She's got some plants in there, of course, a great big water dish so she can get in it. These guys are from a tropical environment. She does get misted twice a day as well to simulate a tropical type environment that rains, right? That's healthy for their skin and shedding purposes and all that. She also has a big water bowl, like I said, that she can get right in and soak herself if she wants to. So all the things. Yeah. Okay, you guys. Well, it's been a lot of fun tonight. I hope you have enjoyed the program as always. Thank you for joining us here on Once in a Wild Wednesday. We will be back here again next Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Central. And please let me know if you have any other questions before we conclude. But I will see you guys next time, of course, here at Once in a Wild. We are nothing close to ordinary, but we love to be your friend. Okay, everyone, thank you so very much for joining in tonight, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.